Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely, Eure, joined by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. We have a fun show for you guys today, breaking down USC's 35-31 win over Colorado. USC gets its first road win of the season, 5 wins on the season, matching its 2018 win total. Pretty crazy there. So we'll talk about that, break that all down, and also give a little preview. USC is going to face Oregon at home. That should be an interesting matchup. We'll also talk about injury updates. We heard from Clay Helton tonight in his Sunday night press conference, so we'll talk about that. Of course, you can call us 512-4-TUNNEL. We're back in the studio. We're not in our janky Airbnb in Colorado, so we have the fancy setup again, which is nice. So you can call us. We'll look forward to talking to you guys. You also can tweet at us, #TunnelVision. I'll put your tweet up on the screen. And, of course, wherever you're watching, Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, put your comments, questions, concerns, and we will answer them, talk about them. But, guys, like I said, USC gets its first road win. You know, that Friday night opponent in the Pac-12 doesn't really do well, but USC was able to overcome the odds and get a win in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, it was a close game. I was pretty close. I think I said 38-31 on our show, and it was 35-31. But you see what happened with USC. There was a lot of different factors. We talked about this. Everything that could potentially be going against the Trojans that, yeah, USC played really well against Arizona, blew them out. Colorado may be the worst team in the Pac-12. But you felt like Colorado was kind of going to get things together. Laviska Shenault would have a big game. He did. He had a big game. You know, he's a tough guy to tackle. USC had a bunch of injuries. There were some guys banged up. And going on the road in the Pac-12 is never easy on a Friday night. You know, Utah, what's their only loss of the year?
USC on a Friday night.
USC home, away on the Friday night. Yep. So it was the fact that USC was able to come back and win that game, I think, is a big deal. That certainly means something. And it was a difficult road, as you saw, Shotgun. Colorado played pretty well. They played a lot better than what they played the last couple of weeks. Stephen Montez, who had no touchdowns and 6 interceptions over the last 2 weeks, didn't turn the ball over at all, threw for a bunch of yards. They ran really well. I thought Colorado played a really good game, then sort of blew it at the end. But USC, I think, fairly lucky to get away with a win there, but you needed to do that heading up into this Oregon showdown. So, big road win. You needed that, but it certainly wasn't an easy one.
Colorado, talking with some of the coaches after the game, multiple guys brought up that Colorado plays a lot better at home.
Yeah.
And they have an advantage with the altitude. You had the advantage of the short week. There were, like we said, there were a lot of factors going against USC. They found a way to win. That was the biggest thing. Keely talked about it last week. That it was kind of a survive and advance mentality in that game, and that's what they did. To get that first road win is big for them. I think it just gives them confidence, and especially if they start getting some guys healthy, then maybe this team can start putting things together going forward. It took them a while to make the adjustments, but they made some adjustments late that ended up being crucial in that game. Obviously, Stephen Montez takes the big hit from Hunter Echols, and they did not play well in the fourth quarter at all.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think it was necessarily that he didn't play great. I didn't like the play calls. There was a lot of deep shots that were taken.
Yeah.
There were a lot of deep shots that were taken.
They could have run the ball a lot more than they did.
They could have done that. And one of the things that USC was struggling with was, the edge rushes. Now, they tried to make some adjustments there, and, the couple of times in the fourth quarter, they were able to get, 1 or 2 tackles for loss there that are like 1-yard losses. But, so I think they made some adjustments to that. But it just seems like they could have done more to attack the things that have been working for them, with the crossing routes and different things like that. Now, USC, and Clay Helton pointed it out tonight, that they came up in press man coverage later in the game. because they were kind of afraid of the deep ball, because Steven Montez had thrown a bunch of those throughout the season. So they played off coverage initially, and then they decided to change it and go a press man. So maybe that's what led Colorado to try to take some of those shots. But it just seemed, and maybe part of it is Steven Montez. It was his decision making to throw the deep option, but it just seemed like they were calling those plays. They were trying to go deep against USC, and it was working so well for them to kind of move the ball down the field, get the ball in Laviska's hands, and it also helped USC. The Laviska Chenault appeared to get banged up as the game went along too.
Yeah.
He was besides having the oblique injury that he's kind of suffered throughout the season. He also took a helmet to the thigh, I think. So they were working. He was on a bike, for a long stretch of time in the second half. So he was a beast. Michael Pittman was a beast too.
Yes.
Michael Pittman with the 100-yard receiving effort in the fourth quarter. That is incredible.
It's a pretty good quarter.
USC stars started being stars there late. The wide receiver group, those three guys, the starters, and then you throw in Drake London. I think he had something like 80 yards as well.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown was great, using him in different ways. Tyler Vaughn's with a great touchdown catch, an amazing catch, just impeccable. Because he doesn't have gloves on.
Yeah.
He does wear gloves sometimes, but that's an all-hands catch. We talked previously about how great his hands are, but it was even more impressive in that kind of cold that he decided not to wear the gloves and just snags that ball like that.
When he snagged that ball on the sideline, the defender kind of makes a play on the ball, doesn't get it, and he just basically stumbles he just kind of like walks into the end zone.
It was just a casual walk.
Casual stroll. I got
into
it,
the end zone.
and nobody's going to stop me as I walk into the end
Casual,
zone.
very casual.
That's my guy. That's my guy, Tyler Vaughn.
It is your guy. I want to get into the nitty-gritty soon. But overall, what do you take away from this win? I know it's USC's first road win of the season. Some people were disappointed in this win just because we knew that Colorado's defense was not good. USC could have done more to do it. But like Shotgun said, I had kind of dubbed this game as just go in there, get the win, and get out, basically, because you just needed this win for the South, the conference standings. But some USC fans don't want to be mediocre. They want to have a successful game. But you also look at the injuries. USC was super banged up on defense. They were using on offense Amon-Ra St. Brown as a running back. What do you take away from this win? Are you as upset as maybe USC fans are, or do you just take this as this is a win, move on to Oregon?
Yeah, USC fans are pretty pissed off, I guess you could say. They're not real happy about what's going on. But you look at what happened in the game. When USC gets down, they're sort of like fighting back their way back the entire time. And they're not really sure what was going on. As far as like offensively, they had the first drive, 3 plays, you score a touchdown. Then they turned the ball over, and that was the only turnover of the game. But it was sort of a big one because once Colorado got moving, you saw Colorado was moving the ball almost at will. And even though USC was getting yards and doing pretty well, I think they went 3 and out in their third drive. But after that, they were just sort of playing catch up the entire time, trying to get back into things. But I thought the USC offense did a good job. It was just more on the defensive side of the ball. You're giving up these kind of big plays, and it just really wasn't working. So you're always playing catch up the entire time. And then at the very end, you had an opportunity in the fourth quarter where Colorado didn't score, and USC put up 14 points. So I thought USC was consistently kind of moving the ball on the offensive side. The defensive side, I think, where the biggest problems was. We didn't see this Colorado offense that was putrid the last couple of weeks. They looked good. And on the defensive side, this was one of the worst secondaries, one of the worst passing defenses in the country. And USC, I thought, did a pretty good job against, but didn't really completely exploit the 128th ranked out of 130 pass defense. You should have done a little bit more than what they did.
I mean, USC actually had the most passing yards of anyone against their defense this year. So Colorado gave up more. 406 passing yards was the most. They had given up 400 to Arizona as well, but 404 there. So some of that was run after catch with Michael Pittman and stuff like that. I really liked the game plan of the 5 wides, actually utilizing it. This was kind of what I expected this offense to look like. Initially.
Yeah.
So, go 5 wides, being able to have a speed back there that, a running back that can really turn up the field and, if they're overplaying things, quick cuts. And Keaton Kirsten, I liked the way he that he ran the ball. When he had opportunities, his pass blocking was a work in progress. So I think that was part of the reason why you saw as much 5 wide as you did. And Graham Harrell said afterwards that part of the reason why you saw Amon-Ra St. Brown motion into the backfield a couple times was just to give them that option.
Yeah.
And so that the defense has to respect that they can still run it even when they have 5 wides on the field. So it was kind of a back and forth there. It was something really interesting. So you talked about there was the interception. They actually had 2 3-and-outs right after that. Those 3 drives were the only 3 drives of the game that Drew Richmond played. Now, Clay Helton talked about it. He didn't start the game. Clay Helton said he wasn't feeling good. Isaac Taylor-Stewart also was, I was told he was throwing up basically the entire day before, and was really, you could see on the sideline he was
sick,
like at the end of the game, like everyone's celebrating and stuff, and his face is just like kind of melted. He's just he was under the weather really bad. And he played okay. He didn't look the same as he has looked. He didn't have that same energy, and obviously that'll happen. Giving up the big touchdown to Laviska, that was a bad job of tackling there. Otherwise, I thought he did okay in the game. But, if Drew Richmond was out, the couple drives when he was in, the offense just did not look good. And I think that's why they decided, because when they brought back, they scored on that first touchdown drive with Jimmins in there at left guard and bumping out Drew McKenzie. And then Drew
Richmond,
bumping out Jalen McKenzie to tackle for Drew Richmond. When he came back in, when Jimmins came back in, that was when they went nine plays, 75 yards to score the touchdown before the half. That kind of boosted them back into it, because I think it was 17-7.
17-7 at the time, yeah.
Yeah, so made it 17-14. And then the offense in the second half was pretty good for the most part. They had a couple drives. One of them was backed up from the pass interference on Michael Pittman. Another one was backed up from another penalty. So the 2 drives where they punted, I think, were both the penalties played a big part in that. But if you noticed, about the 11, 12-minute mark, I pointed it out, Clay Helton went berserk on the sideline, as well as Chad Kay, as well as Johnny Nansen. All the defensive coaches, they got a 5-yard illegal substitution penalty. What happened is Laviska Shenault caught the ball near the sideline and immediately went out, and they never gave USC an opportunity to sub. So Clay Helton, I got some details on it, that Clay Helton's the guy that determines when USC is going to sub. He has the final authority, and he'll call for a sub situation. You'll see him on the sidelines with his arms out, just reinforcing it to the referees, and then they'll try to run guys in and out. And in that situation, the referees did not allow them to sub. They didn't give them an opportunity to match the substitution, and so they were all going berserk. It was just a terrible call by the Pac-12 refs. Well, Clay Helton worked the referees. He worked them, and they ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. And, hey, did that 5 yards factor into the touchdown? I mean, the next they had gained 3 or 4 yards on the run play where it was called. And there was an incompletion, a 3-yard run, and an incompletion were the next 3 plays. So would they have scored? Maybe, maybe not. The play calling may have been different. Who knows? They end up scoring a touchdown on the drive, though. But after it, during the TV timeout, Clay Helton was going off on the referees over and over and over.
Yeah.
And I think you got to give Clay Helton credit, because he worked the referees. There were 2 calls against USC the rest of the game. 2 calls in basically a half of football. That's unheard of in the Pac-12. And one of them was a false start on Tyler Vaughn's. The other one was an obvious, pass interference on Michael Pittman Jr. So, every other call seemed to go USC's way. Even the hit that on Steven Montez, that could have been a call late hit. That one, Hunter Echols took 2 steps, before driving him into the ground. Whereas early in the game, Keaton Slovis took the hit, and it was much less, timing-wise, was much less time between the hits and the quarterback, releasing the ball. So could have easily been a penalty thrown there, but all the calls seem to go in USC's favor after that, pretty much. So give Clay Helton credit. It's a very underrated skill. The best, especially college basketball. The best coaches know how to work the referees. Before the games and then during the games to get calls. Mike Krzyzewski is incredible at it, and people are always upset at the way that they do things, at the way that they get extra calls, it seems like. But he does a great job of it, and Clay Helton did a great job in that game of helping his team out by taking advantage of a referee's mistake and getting in their head a little bit and getting them to get the calls.
So we're 8 games into the season, which is crazy. Do you feel like you have a good sense of who this team is? I feel like the only thing we really know about this team is that they have fight in them. That's like really the only bottom line thing that you can take away, because I feel like every week it's a different team based on who they're playing. When they played Khalil Tate, when they played Utah, I feel like they knew they had to step up their performance and play to a certain level. And then sometimes I feel like they come in maybe a Colorado game and kind of slow to get there. But I think the one thing we do know is that this team will fight to the very end.
Yeah, they do have a lot of fight in them, which is a good thing. You're not seeing this team give up, which is great. But the Pac-12 in general, it's a week-by-week basis. You just don't know. If you would have seen Stanford play against UCLA, you would have never said, hey, I think Stanford's going to go out and win the next game. Now, KJ Costello came back, and he played pretty well. But, Stanford went out and won that game, and you're like, there's no way. They were awful. You watch it, a Cal, how good their defense was. Now, they played Utah, and once they're on their third-string quarterback now, so they're one of three teams in the Pac-12 that have used three starting quarterbacks, USC, Stanford, and Cal, the other one. And then they get blown out 35-0. It's a week-by-week thing. Teams look completely different. Colorado could not have looked any different against USC at home than they did on the road the past couple of weeks. They look like a real team. And we thought they were a legit team, even though they were number 12 in our Pac-12 power rankings we did for 24/7 Sports. USC did not look as good as they did blowing out Arizona, where they got 7 sacks and all that stuff. It's a week-by-week thing. I don't think it's just a USC thing. I think it's a Pac-12 thing. There's a lot of mediocrity in the conference, and I think that's going to come in week to week, where you can come out looking really good one week and you look like crap the next week. I think USC is very talented, but they're not immune to that as well. And so we don't know what we're going to see when USC plays Oregon next weekend. But they definitely did not look as good as they have, even like the second half of Notre Dame on the road, at home against Arizona, and Colorado looked completely different. And that's why this was a close game that USC needed a late fourth quarter comeback to win.
Yeah, it seemed like, I've given the USC coaches, especially on the defensive side, a lot of credit for how they've managed the injuries they've had and how guys have stepped up. It seemed like this game, it finally, the opposition was able to take advantage of those injuries.
They did.
It's because they really were able to attack off tackle a lot. Whether it was, whoever the edge rushers were, they really attacked the edge pretty well. And I think part of it was the guy, Caleb Tremblay and Hunter Echols, getting their first starts, and the guys that were subbing in there. Elijah Winston gets moved back to outside linebacker.
He was outside, which we haven't seen for couple months
since he moved to inside linebacker during the fall camp, and he gets moved back. But it was also the linebackers behind them, because it depending on the call, if the defensive end, the edge guy, is supposed to take the dive on a read option, then the responsibility for holding the edge becomes the next defender, which is often the linebacker. Sometimes it's a safety out there. And I was talking with Chad Kay a little bit about it. He says our guys did a good job at times, and they'll probably get they would get reamed from the fans a little bit, because you may not know whose responsibility it is. So I think that it was partly those guys. They were definitely not 100%, but you have injuries there. You have injuries at the next guy, at the next level, the guys that will be stepping up. It was Kanai Mauga sometimes. It was Chase Williams at times at the safety spot. I think Isaiah Polmau did not play very well. He actually got benched in the fourth quarter. Britton Allen played, I think, 3 straight drives.
Was he benched or was he tired? What was it?
So Greg Burns
was benched.
So Greg Burns told me that he wanted to go over some things with Isaiah. So they put Britton Allen in. He said that he's been wanting to get Britton Allen in there, getting him in the rotation a little bit. But so basically it was going to be, all right, you're going to set out this drive. I'm going to show you some things while you're over here, is the way he made it sound. I'll put that interview up, I think, tomorrow morning there. But then Britton Allen was playing well, and he's like, we're just going to stick with Britton Allen. And then when they got to the 2-minute drill, the last drive, that's when they put Isaiah back in the game. So they needed the veteran experience then. But he got benched. He took some bad angles at times. And they didn't tackle well at all in the first half.
It was bad.
They tackled much better as the game progressed. The same thing with Colorado to an extent, too. They were terrible early tackling-wise, and they got a little bit better as the game progressed. Now, there was late USC was able to get some big run-after catches, but like the Pittman one, but that wasn't really tackling. He just split the defense. So I thought that there are a lot of things that still need to be improved there. They did make some adjustments, and those adjustments played up a lot, in that fourth quarter. And USC dominated the fourth quarter. That was the difference in the game.
Yeah.
They found a way to win.
14-0 in the fourth quarter. That was the difference.
Yeah, and in that sense, do you feel like USC is getting the injuries are getting talked about enough? I feel like some fans are just like, who cares about injuries? We're talented across the board, but injuries do matter. Like when you have your starters out, like that does matter to a certain extent. Do you feel like that's getting talked about enough, or do you think this team should just perform no matter what?
No one ever remembers injuries.
Yeah, and I think they're performing. I mean, I think you got to perform no matter what. I heard people talking about how the secondary was completely depleted. Like, no, everyone was back except Talanoa Hufanga. Like everybody else was back.
Chris Steele was not there.
Yeah, but he wasn't a regular starter. He was a starter he's a backup, you know.
I mean, he started like 4 games now.
And Burns has referred to it as like a 3-man rotation.
Right, but so one of your there's 2 positions. Two of your starters are still there. So you had
and one of them's throwing up on the sideline.
Okay, well,
and the other one just came back from a back injury.
Whatever,
was very winded himself.
There's no excuses. Who would you rather have, the Colorado bench or the Colorado roster or the USC roster?
But that's not what we're saying here.
That's what I'm saying here. It's like injuries are not an excuse when you're playing the worst team in the Pac-12. So that's what I'm talking about.
On a short week,
they had a short week too.
Yeah,
Okay.
but not with 6 guys being.
It was a beautiful day. It wasn't snowing. Look, there's no excuses. Look, it's Colorado.
Day.
You shouldn't have been losing by 10 to Colorado throughout the entire game. That should not have happened. The secondary was not depleted outside of Talanoa Hufanga. You had plenty of guys there. It was fine. No, I don't think injuries are an excuse at all. They've talked about it plenty. I don't say that's an excuse.
I don't think it's an excuse for them being behind Colorado. However, it's something that should be
factor.
noted.
Yeah.
It's
what Colorado did really well was attack USC's edge. Well, I just went through a whole rant about how all the players that were in there were all backups. So, yeah, if you don't have your starters, it has an impact.
Yeah, when Christian Rector's in there, no one attacked the edge. Is that what you're saying?
Christian Rector has been at like 42% for most of the season.
Okay. I'm just saying he was in there, and they still attacked the edge. Even with Drake Jackson in there, they were attacking the edge. So, it was happening. And this is the worst team in the Pac-12, the worst. There's 12 teams. This would be number 12. So, no, not an excuse. You have some guys banged up.
Okay.
All right. I'm just saying.
I'm just exploring
I'm speaking
that
for the
factor.
fans here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see.
It's been talked about plenty. And it was talked about to the point where people were saying, nobody was left in the secondary. Well, maybe the week before, nobody was left in the secondary.
Who was saying that?
That was one of the TV broadcasts they were talking about it. It was like a thing.
Them saying the 10 starters were out and stuff, and some of the guys on that list were just those aren't the true starters necessarily. It was overplayed maybe to an extent by the broadcast, but I think it definitely played a factor. And like I said, I think this is the first time that someone was able to exploit those injuries and give Colorado credit. Because that's something you need to do as a game when you're game planning. Is all right. Where are they weak? Where can we attack?
Yeah. I think when you got a lot of mediocre teams, which is what you have in the Pac-12, you're going to see a little bit of a roller coaster. You're going to see Colorado can play here on offense. They have stars. We talked about Steven Montez and Laviska Shenault. They got a pretty good group of wide receivers. They run the ball pretty well.
I really like that freshman running back, too.
Yeah.
Mango.
Very nice. I mean,
a beast.
Mustafa Johnson is great. Nate Landman. There's some stars, but they don't all necessarily going to play together. So sometimes, the last 2 weeks, we saw them in a trough, and they came back home. On the road, they came back home. There was a bunch of guys injured, and I think for the first time in a few weeks, both Shenault and Mustafa Johnson were more healthy than they've been. So they were going to play at a high level. We've seen USC do that as well. That's when you're talking about a team like USC that has the talent they have, you just don't want to see those big dips. There was a pretty big dip, I think, against Colorado. Now, they got the win. They fought there just like Keely said. They didn't give up. They're persevering. They're fighting on all that. But the swings that you're seeing with USC shouldn't be as severe as they have been. That's what's going on throughout the entire Pac-12. UCLA can look like dirt, and then they'll look good. They were crazy good in this last weekend. Arizona State, everything was keeping close. They've got blown out the last 2 weeks. It's just up and down. I think that, to me, is a sign of there's a lot of mediocrity in this conference. And USC has enough talent that they shouldn't be this mediocre. They should not be 5-3 at this point.
Yes. No, I agree with that on the whole. I was just talking specifically against this game or against Colorado on a short week on a Friday away. But yes, I agree on the whole. They should be better than what they are. The record says right now.
And speaking of the altitude, it was huge for them to actually control the ball in the fourth quarter. You know, because they going into the fourth quarter, the time of possession was heavily favored in Colorado's way, and USC had the ball for 9 minutes in the fourth quarter. So I think that was really big because that defense, they did a good job getting off the field in the fourth quarter. You know, it was huge, the third down conversions. In the second half, Colorado was 1 of 7. And now one of those came early in the fourth quarter, but you know that was huge because that defense would have just gotten more and more gassed.
Yeah.
You know, they were rotating as much as they could. You saw at times like Max Williams would go in mid-drive for Greg Johnson.
Yeah.
You even saw like Elijah Griffin went for a deep ball on he had a deep ball defense, and they immediately pulled him out and put somebody else in, which you don't usually see like cornerbacks. You know,
They don't like to rotate those. No.
yeah, being pulled out in mid-drive or anything like that. So they were trying to rotate as much as they could, and I could see guys, you know, going back and forth on the sideline. I could see guys were really huffing and puffing late in that game. So controlling the time of possession was huge in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, basically the opposite of Notre Dame in that sense.
How are you guys on the sideline? Like, we're in the press box, and we're not like running around. We had good food. They had like lots of sweets. It was a really
Shouts to the Colorado food.
Colorado, like SIDs, a Colorado, like awesome press box and everything. But how are you guys? I know it's a pain in the butt to you have to go through the stands to get from one end to the other. But were you guys tired? Like, did you guys feel the altitude like you did against BYU?
Yes, I always just feel kind of foggy. Like, but I think BYU was worse just because it was hot too. But
Okay.
yeah,
So I ran a ton in the first first 2.5 quarters, and then there had been some people that left in the front row, so I just chilled out near the 50-yard line for a little while. I got some different perspective on because the Colorado field, normally USC, the media can go to the 30-yard line, I believe it is, 30 or 35. Colorado is the 20.
yeah.
So you lose 10 yards. So that, you know, anything that happens in the middle of the field is that much more difficult, you know,
To
as
shoot.
a photographer to shoot because I don't have the big boy lens.
No, big boy.
Still waiting on Ryan to purchase that for the site.
Well, you're sitting on the 50-yard line for games. It's like you're lazy for, you know.
Yeah, so it was actually, you know, I got a different perspective there and got to shoot a little bit of the game there. You know, I was kind of moving back and forth.
Yeah.
So that was a little different, but during the first half, I could definitely feel it. You know, that when I was running back and forth, I was huffing and puffing a little bit more than normal, which is still a lot.
Yeah, because I remember turning to Alicia De Ortola from Radiator, and I was like, I just feel really off right now. And she's like, it's the altitude. And I was like, oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah, so you feel the difference. I'm actually going to go to a live caller who has been patiently waiting
Yeah, let's do
for
that.
like 23 minutes, so thank you. Hello, you are live on television.
Hi, Keely. It's Heather Browning calling.
Hello.
And I have a couple of comments and a question. So bear with me. First of all, I loved your coat on Friday night. So
Oh, thank you.
really nicely done there. It was cold, so
Yes,
you needed all the fur.
it's true.
And it was nice to see so many USC fans in Colorado. I feel like we were really behind this team and kind of gave them a chance to get back in the game, which we didn't think we'd have to do, but we were definitely supporting there. And just real quick, USC has been in my family for 4 generations, and we've been season ticket holders and Trojan Athletic Fund contributors. So I've been through the ups and downs of the program throughout the years. And my loyalty is deep, but my patience has grown thin. And with every article that I read and commentary that I listen to, the dialogue is always the same. Our talent is immense, but that's only on paper. And so my question is this: if this is the case, when you guys talk about the talent of this team, why do we continue to bite and scratch our way to wins or lose games that we should win? And is it that our coaches are not adequately equipped to make adjustments, or do we just lack discipline and direction? Also, for all of you guys, if you were in charge of the program, what would you be doing differently at this point in the season? And to you, Keely,
Whoa.
if Dan Liber is single, I'd like to introduce him to my mom. So
Wow, he's not.
thank you, and fight on.
Thank you for.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah,
Holy,
thank you.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, first of all, Dan Weber is happily married, so no on that. On the fans' point, I actually thought that the fans pumped up the defense before the final drive.
They did.
Because they
Michael
were in,
Pittman brought that up, too.
they were in the corner of that end zone, and Colorado put on Mo Bamba, which is the song, and USC's defense really likes that song for some reason, so they were pumped up, USC's fans were pumped up, and it was kind of like a home crowd environment right before that drive. So yeah, shouts to the USC fans for that one.
Yeah. And Heather, on the talent side versus the coaching side, I mean, you mentioned some things. I think those are all factors, but really it's more about player development. And if you get a 5-star recruit or a 4-star recruit coming in, does that mean that they're going to be the best player in college? Not necessarily, but you look at the talent index that 247 goes through. It's a composite of what's going on. Who are the top teams? It's the Ohio States of the world. It's the Alabamas. It's the Georgias, Oklahomas. Like, those are the teams that are at the top, and USC is number 4 actually on that list. Everyone else around USC is in the top 10 on the AP poll and all that stuff, and USC is not. So I'm not saying that recruiting rankings always mean everything, but all the other teams that are ranked high in the recruiting rankings where USC is are doing very well, and USC is not. I think that's a big factor. It's not necessarily the discipline or all that. I mean, part of it's, but it's really about player development and being able to put your athletes in the right position. You've seen what Oklahoma has been able to do, 2 Heismans in a row, and you got Jalen Hurts there now. Whatever you're going to do is like, hey, you get a good athlete in there. We're going to figure out what's going to work with that athlete as a quarterback or whatever position, and they're going to succeed. And Lincoln Riley's done that, an amazing job taking over for a legend in Bob Stoops to win 2 Heismans in a row and have another contender in your 3rd year, even bringing in a transfer. That's showing that these guys know what to do with the talent they have. For USC, that's really been the issue. And the thing with USC is USC's in the Pac-12. Now, you could say the same thing about Clemson, where the rest of the ACC is garbage. The rest of the Pac-12 is not that good. Yeah, I think Utah's a good team. I think Oregon's a good team. But if USC had a guy like Urban Meyer, it would be kind of like the Pete Carroll days all over again. You would have USC here and everybody else. The recruiting rankings, recruiting has been hurt significantly in the last year and a half or so. Certainly the product on the field. I think all that can change if you have really good coaching. So to me, it's all about you're not having elite coaching to go along with your elite talent, and that's why USC is where they are right now.
I would agree with that assessment. Yeah, I think that when you talk about adjustments, I think they're doing a much better job this season of adjusting. Now, maybe they adjusted a little too late on defensive side yesterday, and I think it took Clancy Pendergast to kind of step away and say, what I want to do and what I like to do is not working.
2 different things.
He wants to blitz. He likes to bring pressure. He likes to be able to force a quarterback to move or to make decisions quickly. And it wasn't working. And then when USC sat back, they played that press coverage to give the defensive line a little bit longer to try to attack up front, but didn't bring extra guys and sat back there with a couple of zone defenders over the top or in the middle. I thought it worked a lot better for them. So it took them a little while to make that adjustment, but when they did, the defense kind of stood up and made some plays there towards the end. The offensive side, I really like the 5 wide stuff, and they went away from it partly during those 3 drives I talked about earlier when Drew Richmond was in. Yeah, that's when you saw more of the regular, the H-back looks and stuff. And I think they had to realize then at the same time, like, this isn't working. Let's go back to spread this stuff out. And you saw more of that. Now they did go with 4 wides a lot. You didn't see much of the tight end or H-back in this game.
There wasn't a lot. No.
Eric Cromanhook didn't play too much. Jude Wolf, I don't think, came in until the very end for the kneel downs as far as on offense. So
is there any Josh Follow or no?
No, I don't think so.
He was on special teams, I believe, but I didn't see him participating in the game in itself.
We had an attempt to set up Dan Weber. Like, isn't that weird?
No.
I'm not saying weird. No, Heather, that was a great call, Heather. But like,
Heather sounds like a great person.
Isn't that amazing? Like, someone was trying to set up Dan Weber on the show. Keely gets marriage proposals and stuff, but for Dan Weber to get I love that. That's
I'll
great.
be sure to tell him.
We're just really trying to reach out to the fans. That's great.
Yeah, sure.
Also, you brought up Lincoln Riley. He lost yesterday.
They did lose
to Kansas State.
Anyway.
True, but I mean, he's won 2 Heismans in a row and has Jalen Hurts doing pretty well.
They were down by 21 or something late.
Yeah,
they came back. But can you imagine the message board if that was USC?
That's what I texted you. I said, imagine the peristyle if that was USC.
Yeah, but that happens like 3 or 4 times a year, not once a year. Like that's like the one.
It's true.
The one hiccup for Oklahoma is going to be that.
It was just
USC's
funny.
got like 4 of those a year.
It was just funny that was the example you used the week that they lived.
Right.
Anyway, thanks, Heather, for the call.
I think you would take what Oklahoma's done the last 3 years over what USC's.
We appreciate you. I'm going to go to our next caller and then jump into some questions if it switches over. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Hi, this is JB. I was trying to answer that lady's question about how to fix this dang team. I don't think it's as hard as we all, make it out to be. I mean, we saw, that there is time during, these short weeks to make changes. They did last week versus Arizona. They suddenly decided to practice tackling and contain the quarterback, and it worked. They didn't have all their running backs, so they decided to go 5 wide and put Amon-Ra, in the backfield, but then they, used it a couple times and went away from it. Why does it take 7-8 weeks to do this stuff and, a bunch of injuries? They could have used this stuff. They don't have to, run the fly sweep every time. They run it enough so that the other team has to respect it, which opens everything up, for the rest of the running plays. They do the same thing. They don't tell Keenan to look for Keenan Kristen on that outlet pass that he's open on like every freaking time. Why not? You don't have to throw it 2 or 3 times until the rest of the field is wide open. The point being is that they've shown that there is time, even in these short weeks, to add this stuff if they actually think that there's a need to do so, and that comes from Clay Helton, and he's not doing his job because he doesn't really think there's a problem.
Thanks for the call. Yeah, I mean, I would say they tried to work on tackling a little bit more, but the tackling was awful, especially in the first half. I mean, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So it's not like the tackling was completely fixed. But yeah, that's, there's been times where you feel USC needed to make changes and they do it too late.
Yeah.
After the 2017 season is when coaching changes needed to be made, but USC won the Pac-12 and Clay Helton didn't do anything. And then they went 5-7, and then you make changes after that. So yeah, I agree with you. There's you need to make the change. You have to be a little more proactive and realize hey, this isn't working. We need to change this and to not wait till it fails miserably and then go, okay, now we're going to change that.
Yeah. Alrighty, thanks for the call,
Thanks for
JB.
the call.
I believe it was JB or JD.
JB.
I always joke that we're like therapy, but that lived up to it. That was
some therapy right there.
That was some therapy.
With back-to-back calls.
We had people on Periscope asking what's the number to call in. It's on the graphic at the bottom of your
Below,
screen.
so right.
512.
Shotgun, point down right where you are right now. No, over. Yes, right
512
there, guys.
Ford Tunnel. Yeah.
Right there. That's where it is.
We did have a question.
Yes?
About who's coming back. Let me find it here. But yeah, who's coming back from injuries?
So Clay Helton said on his conference call that he would give more information on Tuesday when he gets more information because the players had both Saturday and Sunday off. He said it was NCAA mandated.
It's from Andy, by the way. Sorry. Thanks, Andy.
That when everyone's back in the building, basically he'll get more information tomorrow and be able to give us better info on Tuesday. He did say that Chris Steele and Christian Rector were on the cusp, so you would assume that means those guys will be back this week. We actually had an injury update. I put an injury update talking with a team source on the P earlier today, so if you want some more information.
Yeah.
This is why we tell you guys,
Gotta
subscribe.
be a subscriber. Check it out.
About
stuff
some
from Shotgun Man.
guys that they could be getting back this weekend as well.
We were the first to report that Chris Steele wasn't making the trip there to Colorado, so that was a little surprised that he wasn't going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, interesting to see all the injuries. Rehab Island, how many bodies are there on Tuesday? But let's jump into some questions. Jasper Smith on YouTube says, can the coaching staff do anything else to teach Keenan Slovis to slide after the QB scrambles? He still doesn't seem to have the awareness in the moment and absorbs too many hits.
There's a couple of those where you want to see him slide, and then other ones where you need to get the first down, and you're got to do something else. So he doesn't seem to make the right decision, but he's a young kid. I think that's something you're going to get with experience too.
And I think as his career progresses, he's going to add more muscle. I think the hits really take an effect on him right now just because he's a true freshman and he's a quarterback, so he's not coming in as a really buff dude or anything. Like every hit he takes, you see him kind of wince when he takes it. Some of them, just don't seem like there's anything even there, and he feels it a little bit.
Yeah.
You got to say that USC was really fortunate to win this game too, because the 2 fumbles that he had.
I do not know how USC recovered both of those. I have shots where if you pause it, the ball is next to 3 Colorado defenders, and there's no USC player around there. Yeah. It's crazy.
And both of those
Shotgun had pictures too.
Yeah. But both those plays were Josh Fallow's brother. He had an opportunity
42.
to recover both of those.
Really?
And neither time could come up with it. One
so
of the times
Keenan Kristen got one and Drake London got the other, and it's those were game-saving recoveries where USC had no business recovering the ball.
Yeah, right at the goal line basically, and then you score, I think, on the next play maybe.
It was,
with Keenan Kristen, and then on that final drive that USC scores on, Because if they did recover that fumble, Colorado, they're already in field goal position at least.
Yeah.
So you're forcing USC to have to score a touchdown late, and there's less time now. There's more pressure and stuff. So it could have been a completely different ball game. And there was another play that the ball was bobbled around. He tried to Keaton tried to pitch it to Keaton and Kristen at the very end, and the ball was bobbled around. Colorado players touched it, and it hit the ground and for an incompletion. Another chance. So there was a couple plays there. For USC to overcome those, they found a way, though.
That 89-yard touchdown drive at the end, which, by the way, I called on Twitter before it happened. I said,
You did?
I said, USC is going to go 89 yards and score a touchdown. It did not look good. They needed the second and 20 to Drake London that went for 19.
Terrific
the
throw
fumble,
and
the
catch
sack
on that
fumble. Yeah, I mean, there was so many good plays that happened to happen in the last drive. I'm like, 2 or 3 times, I'm like, my prediction is not going to come true. And then it did. So I was like, called that.
Yeah, right after the fumble on that play, it was 2nd and 20, and a beautiful throw and catch. Drake London over the middle, kind of a vertical route, and Keaton Slovis just basically sees the linebacker that's covering him, sees his back is churned, and throws it right to the left of the linebacker. And Drake London makes a great adjustment midair to go and catch it, makes a great hands catch. And they pick up, I think, 19 yards there.
Yeah.
And then Quincy Junty actually comes in to get the 3rd and 1. So he picked up a couple of first downs on that final drive, and I don't think he carried the ball.
That was his first carries, I think.
Prior in the game. So give him credit for bouncing back from the fumble he had last week. Obviously, they wanted him on 3rd and 1 because he's a much bigger back. Keenan Kristen actually did not break a tackle the entire game. So his thing is all speed. Now, eventually that will develop, and he's a pretty stout dude, but he's just smaller. So if he's not breaking a tackle, you kind of want a bigger back in there on that 3rd and 1, which is why I think you saw Quincy Junty go in late in the game on that final drive for a couple carries.
And it's great for Drake London, too, because we've seen so many times in critical junctures that the ball went to him and bad things happened. So for something good to happen, that was really nice for him. So Quincy gets the carry where his only other carry was a fumble. So nice for some guys they were in critical spots and it didn't work out. It worked out in this game.
Yeah, getting that bad taste out of their mouth. Yeah, Shotgun?
I thought the offensive air attack, they really used the entire field. You saw Drake London in the middle of the field, Amon-Ra in the middle of the field. You saw Pittman on the edge, Tyler Vaughn's on the edge. You saw the receiver screens. So that was one of the things they did. If you guys didn't notice, the receiver screens were an extension of the run game. That was 5 wides. Okay, we're going to use Michael Pittman as a running back. We're going to use Amon-Ra St. Brown as a running back. Instead of just handing the ball off, we're going to throw it out there and get 3 blockers in front, and that's just going to be those are going to be kind of our running plays in this game to an extent, because of the way that Colorado was playing their off coverage, because they didn't want to get beat deep from some of those guys, even though they still did get beat deep.
They still did, yeah.
Which was also, I saw that one that was developing right in front of me, and as soon as Pittman got by the first line of defense, I was like, this is probably about to be a big play, because Drake London ran, I think, a post route or something. It took the safety with him, opened it wide open, and Slovis put it on him. Slovis made some good throws in this game. He made a couple throws that were uncharacteristic of him. He's been really accurate, and he had a couple of ones. Same thing last week against Arizona. A couple throws just weren't very accurate. This one, the interception, that was just a bad throw. He threw it way inside.
He also double pumped, which we don't really see him do that.
True, which might have played into it. But he's been really good as far as his accuracy and putting the ball where he wants to put it. To see there were a couple of them there he didn't make it. He still threw for over 400 yards.
Yeah,
so he had a big day.
Pretty good day.
Pretty good day. I'm going to go into rapid fire mode just because we have a lot of questions that we've been talking for a bit. Brian says, Shotgun, what are your thoughts on USC's defense covering Laviska Shenault?
I thought Colorado did a really good job of moving him around different times. You saw that if you go through the stat sheet and look at who tackled him on these plays, it'll probably be someone different on every other time. There was someone different because they did a great job moving around. They did different things with him, from pop passes to their crossing routes were really successful. Katie Nixon got in both times on crossing routes. So I thought their offensive game plan with Laviska was really, really good. If you have someone you think is a true lockdown, then maybe you shadow him, which you could try to do. But I think with the way that Isaiah Taylor Stewart was sick, Elijah Griffin coming back from a back injury, they just kind of tried to play it out. And, I thought that Laviska won that battle much more than USC did.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Jasper Smith, who says, any chance Helton/Harrell go to ball control strategy against Oregon and win the time of possession, considering the injuries on defense, and keep the strength of the Oregon offensive line off the field?
interesting to see. I don't remember who it was, but somebody in the last tunnel vision said USC was going to be a lot more air raidy in this last, completely. And they come out 5 wides, like boom. It's like, I'm pretty good at this. I don't know what I'm doing. Will they do that? That's a good question, Jasper. I'm not sure.
I would agree with your last statement that you don't know what you're doing.
I don't know what I'm doing. Fairly, yes. I did call the score almost. I called the final touchdown. I told you what the offense was going to be like. I don't know against Oregon because if you watched the game last night, definitely the offensive line was controlling. You have Justin Herbert, who might be the first pick in the draft, maybe the first quarterback picked in the NFL draft in the spring. They were running the ball a lot. C.J. Verdell was doing a great job. He was benched, didn't start that game, and then comes in and runs for over 200 yards. I think that kind of lit a fire under him. But great running attack, certainly a great offensive line. They can control the football, and they can do a lot of different things on offense. I'm curious to see what kind of game plan USC has. I don't know if the Trojans are going to go a lot more 5 wide kind of stuff, and we'll see if some of the injuries on the tailback position come back. But having an Amon-Ra St. Brown he had 3 carries, and Keaton Kristen had 3 carries early in the game. It was equal. And apparently that Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown, I talked to Jalen McKenzie, said they ran it in practice. It worked the exact same way, and they scored a touchdown on it. But if they're not going to do that, are they going to try to slow things down more? I don't know, I'm sure. But that's really Oregon's game. I think you got to play your game. Oregon's going to be a lot of ball control and keep it close. Oregon got really weird in the fourth quarter, just like Colorado did. Oregon didn't play well with the lead. They started throwing the ball when they didn't need to, and I think the same thing happened with Colorado. They were playing really weird with the lead. But that's an offensive line that can control the game. Not sure how USC is going to adjust to it, but you might see a little bit different than the 5 wides we saw against Colorado.
Yeah, I think the game plan will be much different than that game plan. Now, who comes back on the offensive side could determine something as well, because – like I said, Keaton Kristen didn't break any tackles. That run that Amon-Ra St. Brown made doesn't score if it's Keaton Kristen, just because he hasn't broken any tackles yet. So he would have been tackled. Took a big hit.
You need perfect blocking for him. Yeah,
just good blocking. Give him
then he'll
give him a hole.
We have a question on Facebook from Jeff who says, "Do bowl games count against your 4 games towards redshirting?"
Yes.
There you go.
Si, senor.
Torian said, "Did Dominique Davis get any touches in the game?"
No. Oh, my God.
He came in, but then...
It was really close. So if you remember when Kristen got banged up a little bit, they brought in Dominique Davis, and it was a little dump-off pass. It was a 2nd and long or something. I forget what the
screen attempt.
Yeah, it was a little screen attempt, and if Davis was in there, he would have got the touch. And so he would have got... We said there was going to be over 0.5 touches for Dominique Davis. He didn't get a single touch, but he was in the game very briefly, and then came out because Kristen kind of came back in the play clock was down to 13 or something, and they swapped running backs. But he would have got a touch. But it's early in the game. Once you saw they were running Amon-Ra St. Brown, then you kind of realize okay, so Dominic Davis might be technically the 3rd string running back, but he's really 4th string at this point. So he wasn't going to get a touch, but he almost did.
And also, since the touch, the bet was 0.5, he just had to get 1 touch. There was a kickoff that went over his head and landed, at the 2-yard line and then bounced in the end zone. And there was a little bit of confusion with him and Velus Jones. If he would have caught that one, that would have been his 1 touch.
I remember that. Yep, I remember that. We have a question from Jacqueline who says, "Why was Keaton getting so much pressure throughout the game? Bad O-line play or holding on to the ball too long?"
A little bit of a combination. I think with some of the routes, when you have 5 wide receivers and you're truly using 5 wide receivers, it takes a little bit longer to go through your progressions if your immediate options are not open. So I think that's part of it. The offensive line was okay. It wasn't great in that game. And I think probably that has a little bit to do with Drew Richmond being out and just adding a new body in there. So I think that it's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, and Jacqueline, I think they need to, when you go 5 wide, a lot of times you're going to bring pressure.
It's quick.
And you got to get out quick. So there's maybe some of it where he's holding on a little bit. But there's a lot of hot routes. You got to make sure wherever the pressure's coming from, that's kind of where you're throwing the ball. And so maybe a little bit of both, like Shotgun said.
Yeah, we have multiple questions about Steven Montez. Jasper says, "Do we win against Colorado if Montez doesn't get hurt?" And then Danny on Facebook said, "What is your thought on Steven Montez? The kid was not the same after he came back. He was quoted as saying he doesn't remember what happened and he only remembers people looking down on him. Does Montez passing the concussion protocol sound legit?" I'm pretty sure he was concussed. It looked like what happened to Keaton against Utah, where his head just the whiplash on the ground, and he immediately took his helmet off and just went like this and like couldn't really see and was just holding his hand to his forehead. So he looked like he was pretty shook up there.
Yeah, Danny, I agree with that assessment, like what Keely was saying. So the previous week against Washington State, Colorado lost their backup quarterback. So they were going to bring in a guy that's really never played before as the third string. He had one play, he ran for like 22 yards. But I talked to Adam Munster-Tiger, who covers the Buffs for 24/7 for Buff Stampede, and he's like, yeah, if that guy's going to play, it's going to be bad news. So I think there could be something to that. Yeah, he had a really nice run. He had a 22-yard run. I mean, he's got the best plus minus or whatever on the field. Like he played for one play and he gained 22 yards. But it might not have been the same. Steven Montez didn't look the same, but I really don't think the offensive play calling helped him either in the fourth quarter. They could have run the ball more. It was very strange the way that all went down. So I'm not going to put it all on Montez's shoulder. Now, if he's playing hurt, fine. But I don't even if he was hurt and he wasn't himself, I didn't like the way the offensive game plan was for Colorado.
Yeah, I also didn't like punting the ball on 4th and 4 at the 34-yard line or something.
That's bad.
And that was the second time inside USC's 40 that they punted the ball. Like,
you can't do that.
Eure, what's their record? I don't even know what their record is, but you struggled the last 2 weeks a lot. You got to go for it there.
Yeah. They were 3 and 4, so you're
it
not
was
punting from the 34-yard line.
And it was initially 3rd and 4 at that spot. So you have 2 plays to get there. Like run the ball off edge where you had a lot of success. If you get 2 yards, then you got 4th and 2. I mean, it was just I did not think the play calling. I didn't think Mel Tucker did a good job of game management there, and maybe that's a first-year head coach.
Yeah, he is a first-year head coach. So.
Yep. We have a question from Concord, who says, has USC ever played a healthy Laviska Shenault?
No, not really.
I don't think anybody has.
And that's the question.
USC banged him up last year, right? Yeah.
And that's the big question for his future as a pro is he going to be downgraded because of his injury kind of history that he's had? He is a dynamite weapon.
He's probably still the best player of the Pac-12, I'd say. Like he's up. If he's not, he's up there. Like
I might take Penei Sewell.
I
think he's eventually a top 5 pick. So. I'm going to take him
but
over.
But, as a short yardage running back, and this was the problem, too. Colorado just couldn't get out of their own way half the time. They had 2 or 3, third and short situations. They put Shenault in there as a wildcat, and they get false starts on both of them. You never get to see him run. Then I think the 3rd or 4th time he got the ball, and he ended up getting a first down. But there was just stuff like that. Colorado's just not a well-put-together team, so that's why you're looking at it they're not that talented. They got some good players, but they're not super talented, and they're not really all that well put together because it's like a first-year head coach, and they still were up by 10 on multiple occasions against USC. That's kind of why you have a big issue.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to a Facebook question from Gerald, who says, do you feel like this coaching staff still cannot adjust during games? I feel like every team makes adjustments after the first couple drives, and SC cannot adjust to the adjustments.
No, they've adjusted.
They adjust all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like this team is much better at making in-game adjustments this season than last year. Now, like I said, I think on the defensive side of this game in particular, they took too long to adjust.
Yeah.
But the offense, has been really good at making adjustments throughout the season. So I think that's a bad question.
Yeah, and half the time, I don't know, I'm not going to say bad question.
Yeah, don't knock the question.
Don't knock the question. But USC shouldn't have to make those kind of adjustments all the time either. So they put themselves in positions where they're down early on. You shouldn't have to do that against a team that you're superior to in Colorado.
Nick on YouTube says UCLA still controls their own destiny in the Pac-12. Isn't that crazy? And Will on Facebook says, should we be worried about UCLA? They seem to be emerging and have a real coach.
Does UCLA control their own destiny now?
I didn't fact check that. So
they did not before. I think last week it was only Oregon and USC. And both teams won, so I don't think UCLA controls their own destiny. I think they need.
No, they don't, because USC controls their own destiny.
Yeah. So, there was multiple teams early on, but I don't think UCLA does anymore. Yeah, I don't think that's the case. But UCLA is they could win the Pac-12, and which is weird because early on in the season we were talking seriously. I was talking to David Woods, who covers the Bruins for Bruin Report Online. And he thought 0-12 was in play, and now they look like they played really well. They could win. They could potentially win the Pac-12. So, if USC would have played UCLA a few weeks ago, it's like a blowout. Now they look like a real team, just like when Josh Keely ran for 300 yards or whatever against USC. He scored 4 touchdowns or something last night. I was watching that game, Pac-12 after dark. Crazy.
They look a lot different with Joshua Kelly being back and healthy, and also DTR has made a lot of progression from the very beginning of the season.
Way better.
Because he was terrible at the very beginning of the season.
And their defense has played a lot better. Their defense looked legit. We saw Stanford beat Washington and then get freaking boat raced by UCLA. I mean, UCLA looks like real. Cal doesn't look legit anymore. Arizona State's kind of fallen off. Obviously, USC has to play Oregon and UCLA. Those are the two better teams on the schedule right now. And it didn't look like 2 weeks ago you wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, it's kind of based off 2 weeks of Pac-12 play, which means in 2 weeks you might say the exact opposite thing.
Right. Yeah, I think I told you guys last week. So this was my best week of Pac-12 picks for like a month. I think I went 3-2 against the spread. A lot of it was, and I did a Pac-12 radio show with Guy Haberman, and he's like, you know what I do? I ignore last week. So what I did was just ignore last week. So look at everything else except last week, and you're going to do much better because you're like, oh, Arizona, they're great now. Like, no, that was 1 week. They really still stink, or whatever it is. It's so just ignore last week, and you'll do a lot better.
We have a Facebook question from Roger who says, what happened to counters, reverses, bootlegs, and any creative plays?
I mean, they just unveiled a completely new formation that they haven't used all season with 5 true wide receivers.
Yeah.
They motioned a guy into the backfield that's a wide receiver and used him as a running back. So there's some creativity. This was a more creative game plan than they've used previously.
Yeah.
So there are still a lot of things that I think could be in there with counters and stuff. I mean, their big counter play is the power run that they run, where they pulled both the usually the right guard and the H-back across. So that's something. Now, what we've seen different is sometimes they'll pull the center. Sometimes we've even seen them pull Drew Richmond before. So they've done some different things, and those are the creativity things that you may not notice, but we haven't seen any trick plays, reverses. The bootlegs is just not really a big part of the air raid offense. The air raid offense is to make quick decisions in the pocket rather than rolling out and trying to make them.
Watch Washington State. And the one thing you're going to say is this is what USC could do easily is you get the ball to the running back in the passing game. Max Borghi is like a freaking beast there. And if USC was throwing the ball to Stephen Carr, and Vivai Malapei, and Marquise Stepp, and all those guys, and Keaton Christon for sure, it's been such a weapon for Washington State. They're not trying to throw the ball down the field all that time and trying to pick. They're dumping it off and letting their athletes make a lot of plays. And you get the high completion percentage. Washington State's just done a really good job of that. I think that's the one thing in this kind of air raid that USC's not done enough of, is getting the ball to the backs in space somewhere in the passing game.
But the thing is, after those top 3 receivers, your next 2 targets are, with receptions are Vi and Stephen Carr.
Yeah.
So they do that some. They could do it more.
Borghi's like the second leading receiver for
But they also don't run the ball ever.
True.
Which is why Mike Leach's philosophy is 5 skill players. We want to divide it up equally between those 5 guys. Then we feel like we have balance. Now, does that mean running the ball every time with the running back? No, they throw it to them more. I think that's just more of their option. They just have to be willing to take the check down when there's nothing there. And that's something that, they struggle with against Washington. They've done a better job since then because those guys can all make guys miss. You see with speed of Keaton Christon or the power of a Marquise Stepp or Vi or just the freak nature of being able to read a defender's hips of Stephen Carr and make guys miss, that they pick up yards that way. And they just have to be willing to do that. Now, they could do some more things like the touchdown that they threw to Keaton Christon.
Yeah.
So that was
so easy.
That was a swing screen. Now, part of the reason why it was so easy is because they brought 3 defenders blitzing through the middle.
Yeah.
And they had no one at all on the outside. But Michael Pittman destroyed the inside defender there. And give Keaton Slovis credit for getting rid of the ball really quickly, because that pressure coming up the middle, you have to. And there was no defender at all to guard Keaton Christon because of the blitz they brought. It was a complete zero pressure. It was all-out blitz. So, and that one was just a great play call against the play that the defense ended up running. But that's something they could do more, is kind of those swing screens where it's not just a wide receiver screen. There's 2 blockers as your receivers out there, and then you just let the running back go and try to make it. That's something that I wouldn't mind seeing added to it a little bit. But the check downs and stuff are kind of in the playbook. It's just when they need to take it versus when not.
Gentlemen, that was a massive failure of rapid fire.
Sorry.
But I'll take it anyway. It was a good answer. Joe Trojan says, is the real conversation for USC winning the South, will Washington beat Utah?
Well, I mean, it depends on if USC beats Oregon. Like right now, Utah looks.
I think that's what his whole question is, and he's asked it way too many times for me to have put it. You know, Keely is nicer than me and letting you do it. If you spam us over and over and over, I'm not answering that.
Utah looks legit. Since losing to USC, they're just pummeling teams. Do you think they're going to go on the road and beat Washington? I mean, I think there's a really good shot, but you can't put that. I mean, it's a team that doesn't play the same on the road. We're not sure, but
no one in the Pac-12 does.
If you want to look at, I mean, if it's a regular team, you'd say, "Man, that team looks too good. They're not losing," but they certainly could lose. Will USC go out and beat Oregon? Like that certainly could happen. But I mean, I wouldn't bank on Utah losing a game at this point. Just the way they look, it's not guaranteeing anything, but they do look legit. And I wasn't ready to give Utah a lot of credit just because we saw them in person, and they just didn't look that good against USC, and they look so much better. Recently, I think if they played that game again, they wouldn't play the same kind of defense and try to man up with USC. It just didn't work well at all. You drop back into coverage, I think you're going to do a much better job. To let Matt Fink beat you and you're Utah, and a lot of people think they could be like a top 5 or 6 team in the country, that's a big deal. So we'll see if they can keep it going. It's not going to be like that easy of a road, but USC can take care of business if they just go out and beat Oregon. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, they were really stubborn in that game. Utah was.
They were very stubborn, and they acted like they were like an Alabama or Ohio State talented. They were facing a team that was more talented, and they were not acknowledging it.
Yeah. Let's go to a Facebook question from Lance, who says, will Kyle Ford get some run at receiver? Love the flare pass to Keenan. Keep that up. Said thanks for the pick. I don't know what that means. But Kyle Ford did get his first playing time this weekend. He was on special teams, which he kept saying that he was closer and closer to getting back. We finally did see him on the field on Friday.
Yeah, why the hell did he play on special teams? Like, what was the point of that?
To get him playing time.
Because of how many bodies they don't have right now.
Yeah, but I mean
that's part of it. I mean, they're using pretty much everybody that's healthy on the roster at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he could redshirt. Like, you're going to play him in game 7? Like, it just seems a little strange.
I mean,
game 8?
I don't know that he's going to get much run at receiver because you just used a 5-wide package with 5 true wide receivers, and I don't think he rotated in at all.
Yeah.
I haven't gone through and charted everything yet to see, but as far as I know, he did not rotate in.
Can we give a little shout out? Bayless Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caught a ball.
Yeah.
Nice job. Like that, we thought we'd see a lot more of him this year.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm still trying to get these questions in. We have a question from, hold on, it's lagging.
Thanks, Lance, for that question.
Yeah, we have a question from Ron, who says, is it too much attention given to skill position players? Wasn't Colorado's big issue line play? I remember SC in its glory years having dominant, powerful lines on both sides of the ball. No more, question mark?
I mean, you can beat the Colorados of the world, like just making some big plays in the way. But yeah, you want to go out and say USC runs the table and goes to the Rose Bowl and plays somebody good like an Oklahoma or a Michigan or something. Like, yeah, you got to have you got to have line play, offensive line play, defensive line play. I think you can beat even a Utah with just your wide receivers making a bunch of plays. That's USC's skill, talent is there at the skill spots, but could you hold up with the line play of some of the best teams in the country? We've seen the last few years that just hasn't been the case.
Shotgun, any rapid fire that you would like to ask?
Oh, man.
We have one from Mars Tracy. Do we only have to beat South teams to win the South, or do we have to beat Oregon and Cal too?
No, it's the conference record overall, not just
Yeah.
your division record. So, yes, they need to beat Oregon and Cal. If they win all their games, obviously they will make the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah.
If they lose to Oregon or lose to any of those teams on their schedule, then you're going to be looking at Utah needing to lose a game as well for them to be
Hence
able to.
the will Washington beat Utah. That was that about. And Jacqueline says, doesn't Utah have a November problem? Which?
I'll defer to Ryan on that one.
Yeah, no, I
We've
think they
seen
have
that.
a little bit of a November problem. But, I mean, Jacqueline, this looks like a different Utah team, but I'm not. I thought they were a different Utah team heading into the USC game. But since then, I mean, that's the one blemish on their schedule. They didn't have like this robust out-of-conference schedule, but they've looked really good. Like the defensive line is amazing. I mean, we saw that secondary look like crap against USC, but they played really well against everybody else, and they're really explosive on offense with Tyler Huntley and Zach Moss. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, outside of the USC game, they look like a real team. And
you remember when I said that nobody remembers injuries? remember Zach Moss got hurt in the first quarter of that game.
Yeah.
Or early in the second quarter of that game. He is such a dynamic weapon for them they didn't have the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And so you look at it and you go, well, Utah looked like crap that game. Well, maybe you forget their best player. If they had their best player, then they probably would have looked a little bit better.
And the stubbornness that Shotgun talked about, do you remember Utah trying to run up the middle, which at the time, USC was not giving up any yardage. Like they were stopping with the 4-man front, stopping everything up the middle, everything outside was a problem. Utah didn't care. They kept trying to do that.
Later in the game,
Yeah, it was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Alan says, what should we expect scheme-wise versus Oregon? Seems like Oregon can get special techniques from both our defense and offense.
Special techniques?
I'm just reading the question.
Not sure exactly what that means. I think you're going to see what they've done, which you'll see a lot of wide receiver screens. You'll see Justin Herbert throw the ball down the field. They're most dangerous when they're running the ball well.
Yeah.
And they have a really good offensive line led by Penei Sewell at left tackle. So it all starts with their offensive line playing well. If USC can slow their run and put pressure on Herbert, he's not that great of a quarterback. I know he's supposed to be a first-round draft pick. He's not that great of a quarterback. He's not.
All right.
He misses way too many throws to be a guy that people are looking at as a 1-1 pick overall.
Yeah.
So he can make special throws, and that's what is so tempting about his talent. But he misses way too many, and if you can pressure him, and by taking the run game away, that would lead to all that. But taking the run game away against that offensive line would be really tough.
One thing to watch, if you watched what Oregon was doing defensively, they did a lot of what teams against USC have done against this air raid. They had 3 or 4 men rushing, and they would drop the lock that guys in coverage. They were not getting pressure most of the time. And so can USC's offensive line hold off and give Keaton Slovis a lot of time? When you saw Gordon back there, he was just like picking them apart because they were rushing 4 guys and weren't getting pressure at all. And he had a lot of time to throw the ball. Does USC get the same kind of time? If they can, I think you can move the ball well. And this is an Oregon team that I think they had 22 sacks coming in on the game. Like they had the most in the Pac-12. They were not getting pressure against Washington State, just rushing 4. Will they do that against USC? If they get pressure, rushing 4, that's going to be a problem. If not, then I think the USC offense can move the ball.
Alan clarified that techniques meant play calls, formations, and personnel. That's not what I think of when I think of technique, but thank you for the clarification.
Anthony asked, as a freshman campaign, would you grade Keaton better than JT? I think so. I mean, he's got the same win total so far. He's been thrown in.
He's just in a much better offensive system, though.
And I was about to bring that part up. But you got it. Yeah.
I also want like a simulation where you put the same offensive line this year, because I think this offensive line is better than last year. So
I think it is, too.
I think that impacts it as well.
At test tackle, Oregon +7. What's the game plan got to be to beat them?
We'll talk about Oregon
I was
more
going
on
to say,
Thursday.
friendly
yes.
reminder, we preview the Oregon game on Thursday at 7, so stay tuned
Hold on.
for that. Yes, Ryan.
Should we do it Thursday at 7? Because you know what Thursday is.
What's up?
Thursdays.
Oh, it's Halloween.
Do you want to do a Wednesday show instead of Thursday?
But it's practice. How are we going to do that?
So we got to do Thursday. So we're working Halloween.
I mean, we can have this conversation off there
Should
as well.
Should we like dress up?
That'd be fun.
Let's dress up for Thursday. You dressed up last night, you moron. Come on.
Anyway.
I had a secret attack coming, but you guys.
Ooh, I want to dress like Dan.
Nice. So are we going to do the show Thursday?
You're the boss.
I know, but I said let's do it Wednesday, and you're like, no, they got practice. So
Because I want to do my job.
I guess we're going to do it Thursday. But so we're going to have a Halloween show.
Or we can do it earlier in the day on Thursday.
You want to try to do it a little earlier?
We could if we wanted to.
Yeah, why don't we? Let's do it a little earlier on Thursday. Because
Okay.
everyone wants to go out trick-or-treating and stuff.
Yes. Agreed.
Should we say?
How about we regroup and tweet it out? The time.
All right, we'll regroup and tweet it out. We're going to do an earlier show on Thursday because it's Halloween, but we might dress up and Shotgun has some secrets.
Jared on YouTube says, will Marquis Step be back before the UCLA game?
That's hard to tell. Officially on the ESPN graphic, he was marked as out for season.
I didn't see that.
So, yeah, they marked him. They marked Vi out for season, I think it was.
I don't. Who makes the graphics? They don't know these things.
Yeah.
Some guy in a truck somewhere.
So, and it just said season, so it's not just saying a regular season. So, but no, he was supposed to be 3 to 5 weeks, so that would put him right around that time. We'll see. It's one of those things you got to wait and see how he recovers from injury, because everybody can be different. Some injuries take a little bit longer than with certain guys.
Like we said, Clay Helton said they'll give an update on Tuesday, but you could get some good news. We'll see.
Yes. Alrighty, I've reached the questions limit. Shotgun, anything
Let's
else?
do it.
There was a question about settle the real USC debate. They've already done that in the courts. It's the University of Southern California.
Yeah.
And Taylor Katoa comeback was a question. I actually found out earlier this season that Taylor Katoa is on his mission. They don't get a chance to really talk to them. Sometimes they're allowed an email. It's real. The Mormon faith, they're really strict about the communication with back home. So I believe he gets to talk to his parents once a week or once a month, something like that. And then outside of the immediate family of the parents, I think it's pretty strict on who can contact them. So I think they've emailed with him so far, but he's still, as of now, on schedule to come back to the team next season.
Yeah.
Oh,
Random question right there.
yeah. We have one last caller, and it's from Eddie from Whittier, and he's called at the end of the show every single time. But we've met him on the sidelines, so just because of that, I'm going to give him the grace of taking his call.
The grace.
The grace. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
How's it going, guys? Sorry it's so late. I'm at work. I'm actually on my lunch break right now, but I was excited to call in. I know it's been hard to get a hold of you guys lately.
Well, thank you for calling
Thanks, Eddie.
in. Thanks for calling on your lunch break, your 8 p.m. lunch break.
Yeah, so I listen during work hours, and then I call on my break. So that's how it works. But anywho, so I was calling because I was just wondering, what is your guys' take on preparation for Oregon? I mean, I know the quarterback seems kind of like the real deal. I don't know if he's the number one quarterback. I doubt it now. He doesn't look like it. But just, our defense is thin. We didn't look so well against Colorado. We don't hit at practice. So, I mean, what do you guys envision as our preparation for Oregon?
Thanks, Eddie. We'll talk more about this on Thursday, but I think USC is going to got a lot of guys back from injury for this game. So I think you're going to see it's more of a complete roster as far as what we've seen maybe the last couple of weeks. Like we talked about, Oregon's offensive line is really stout. They have a great rushing attack. USC is going to need that front four, that front seven to be able to stop, what Oregon's able to do. I mean, we saw, C.J. Verdell, I think he busted off an 89-yard run, just boom, just turning the game around like that. They're capable of making those big kind of plays. And then we've seen, you watch the Oregon defense, and you're seeing names. Oh, Mace Funa, I know that's a guy. Why do you know these people? Because USC recruited them, and they're now playing for Oregon. These aren't guys that are like, you play Washington State, and there's guys you never heard of, and they're just like developed. These are guys that USC wanted, and they're playing well. So, like I said, they had some issues getting to Anthony Gordon for Washington State. If USC's offensive line can kind of hold up, that's, Kayvon Thibodeau, those guys like that, not getting pressure, that's going to help a lot. But there's legit dudes on this Oregon roster, Penny Sewell, guys that USC really wanted, and they're there and not at USC. And that's kind of USC's MO. They're going to get all the guys that they want, and then maybe you're going to face somebody else that's maybe not as good, but they've developed well. These are guys that USC wanted, and they weren't able to get.
And there's also some on the other side too, some of the DBs that really wanted to go to USC and have instead gone to
Thomas Graham,
Diamador Lenore. Those guys have been studs for them for I think 3 years now. So expect them to be playing really hard this weekend as well. Those type of kids that are from the LA area and USC doesn't recruit them as hard. Or in Thomas Graham's case, he's committed. New staff comes in. They don't really like him as much. So he gets away to Oregon. Those guys, those are the type of kids that usually have really big games when they come home type of thing. So,
and you want to talk about, motivation? You take like at Oklahoma losing, you're seeing there's more of an opportunity for Oregon to make the playoff now than there was a week or two ago. So motivation factor for Oregon is going to be sky high because they really feel like they're going to have an opportunity, if they run the table, to be in the playoff discussion, where before it just didn't look like it. But Oklahoma's out. It would have helped Oregon if LSU ended up losing. They won that game. So we'll see. But the motivation factor, I think, is going to be very high.
Your new number one team, Ed Orgeron coached LSU with John Robinson and Kenichi Udeze on staff.
Yeah, well, I wonder, did USC knows Ed Orgeron, right? Like they've been familiar with him.
What a troll, Ryan. Eddie, thank you so much for calling in on your lunch break. We appreciate you. Do we know where game day is yet? Did they announce that? I feel like it's between Memphis and USC Oregon.
I don't know if they announced. It's Memphis and
SMU.
and SMU, like undefeated teams or whatever.
Not sure, but
Did they announce it yet?
I don't think they did. I just checked during that, but
We have not seen it yet.
also we have clamors for Jake from Snake Lake or Jeremiah from Snake Lake. So I'm putting it out into someone commented that and it got in my head. So putting it out into the ether, you're wanted, Jeremiah. But I think that's gonna wrap it up for this week's show. Shotgun, do you have?
I was just looking through game day to see if they'd announced anything.
Did they?
Nothing on their Twitter yet.
Interesting. So TBD on that one, I guess. But that's going to wrap it up. Any final thoughts, guys, before we come back for a special Halloween edition of Tunnel Vision?
Yeah, no, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you guys watched. And when we were in Denver, it was a little bit different setup. So we're back to our normal stuff now, but it worked pretty well. So that's good. So Periscope people, sorry we didn't get to include you on Thursday, but it was fun to do it on location.
Yeah, good stuff.
USC gets 35-31 win. It wasn't pretty, but they got the win. Survive in advance has got to be their mentality if they want to make it to the Pac-12 championship. That's what it's all about. It doesn't matter if it's pretty. It just matters if they win, especially a game like Oregon coming up. As long as they can find a way to win, I don't think people are going to be complaining about how pretty it is.
Yeah. And one thing, and our friends talk about this a lot, you're a USC football fan. You see a guy like Michael Pittman balling out. You see some of these guys playing their hearts out. I know a lot of you want to see some kind of regime change, and so maybe you're not even rooting for the team. Just try to enjoy it. Like, things are going to work out. I think you're going to be fine what happens at the end of the season. But if players are going to go out there and play really hard, try to enjoy. That would be my suggestion. Go out and enjoy. Because college football is only here for 3 months a year. You don't want to wait for it to be over or wait for a change to happen. Like, enjoy when you get to see a guy like Michael Pittman just ball out like that.
Only 4 games left. How crazy is that?
That's insane.
I know.
Then you're gonna be like, for months, you're gonna be like, oh, I wish I had college football back. So think about that time when you're wishing you had college football back. You have it right now. You're seeing some special players make special plays. I know you want some kind of change. Maybe just try and enjoy it.
Come from behind victory, too.
Yeah.
Which has been really rare for USC.
Yeah, the last time 10 points down in the fourth quarter was the Penn State game. Yeah.
Well, look at that. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We love when you call in all your comments, questions, and whatnot. So we appreciate you. That's Ryan. That's Chaka. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all on Thursday. Bye.
See ya.